Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first video on the Spoked Wheel YouTube channel. So today we're going to be starting off with some Pro Cycling Manager 2020 content, and I'm excited to start this series for a couple of reasons. I'm going to be playing as a pro cyclist in that single player mode, and instead of making myself or something for my channel, I thought it might be fun to pick a rider from the past and reinvent his career in the current year. So I'm going to be using the 2020 World Database, which I'll put a link to the description in. Those guys who work on that are a huge asset to the community, and they make the game a lot more playable and fun. And as you can see from the name and the picture that I have on the screen right now, I'm going to be playing as Andy Schleck. So Andy Schleck is a big part of how I personally got into the world of professional cycling. I distinctly remember sitting on my couch one summer in 2010 and seeing an ad on the TV that basically pitted Andy Schleck against Alberto Contador to hype up the 2010 Tour de France. And I thought it looked pretty cool, and I started watching, and I've been watching ever since. So while he was riding, Andy Schleck was my favorite rider because he was that rider that got me into the sport. And of course, unfortunately, he had to retire earlier than he would have liked in 2014 because of a couple injuries. So I'm going to reignite his career here and see if we can't get him a few more victories that his talent probably deserved if his career wasn't cut short by injuries. So today, for the first episode, I'm just going to be doing setup stuff. So I'm going to pick the team, pick my season objectives, set up my schedule, and things like that. And then in future episodes, we'll get into the racing. In the long term, I'm hoping to probably branch out and do all sorts of different cycling content. I already sort of have plans in the work for a podcast potentially at some point. You can follow me on Twitter at Spoked Wheel for reactions to races and things like that if you're into the professional side of things as well, apart from Pro Cycling Manager. But I'm a big Pro Cycling Manager fan, so I thought it would be a fun way to start and kind of build the channel a little bit. So we're gonna get underway as Andy Schleck. I know obviously we have to make him a climber. He was first and foremost a climber, one of the most talented climbers I've seen in my time watching cycling. I was a little conflicted about what to make the second axis. Obviously, he was a big contender in Grand Tours, wasn't the best time trialist, but he did have some really nice results in sort of the one-day punchy classics. Of course, he won the 2009 Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He had some decent results over the years at Flèche-Wallonne as well. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make his secondary access puncher, to sort of allow us to replicate his performances in that type of race. And then what I'm thinking is that at some point in one of my first 7, I think it is, upgrades, I will upgrade his stage racing potential to get a little boost in the recovery to allow our version of Andy Schleck to perform better in the Grand Tours, which is, of course, going to be, I think, the ultimate goal of this playthrough is to try and get Andy Schleck a couple of Grand Tour victories. Of course, in real life, he has the 2010 Tour de France to his name. I know he said it's not quite the same because he was awarded it after the fact because Alberto Contador tested positive. So we're going to see if we can't get Andy Schleck a couple Grand Tour victories on the road in Pro Cycling Manager 2020. So for potential, I'm going to go ahead and leave it on Grand Champion. I think Andy Schleck had the potential to be a Grand Champion if his career wasn't, like we've already discussed, cut short by injuries. Yeah, and I think that's here. That's all for here. We're going to go climber and puncher as our primary and secondary. And okay, so team selection. Coming in, I was thinking that I would either want to have him start on a team from Luxembourg, which luckily we have that option, or a French team. We don't have that option. He started as an amateur in France, so if I was going to try and make it as realistic as possible, we would have gone with a French team, but I think the Luxembourg team will work nicely, especially because it is Leopard Pro Cycling. Of course, that was the name. Leopard Trek, I guess, was the name of the team that Andy sort of started himself, along with Frank Schleck and Fabian Cancellara for the 2011 season, after riding for Saxo Bank in 2010 and 2009. So that's a nice little bit of continuity between our Andy Schleck's career and the real Andy Schleck's career. Yeah, so I'm happy with the team, and we're just going to get started. All right, so we're now past the loading screen into our career, and I've gone ahead and I've adjusted some things. So, of course, first and foremost, we're going to head over to our season objectives page, and I put our preseason training level on very high. Of course, that's the one you want it on to start off as best as possible. And I've picked out 3 objectives that look okay and fit in with our schedule that the team gave us. To start with, of course, we only have 15 points to change the schedule, so we're not going to do too much of that. There was a race that conflicted with the national championships, so I got rid of that and added the national championships back, which basically used all of the points. So the Tour de l'Avenir is not yet on our schedule, so we're going to have to add that, but these 2 season objectives are on our schedule. This one in particular could be pretty good for Andy Schleck as a climber. Lots of elevation in that one. So I'm happy with this. We got our fitness and our 3 objective peaks figured out. Of course, this is the first season. We're in continental level. It's not the most important what races we do. What's more important is earning experience and leveling up and becoming a better rider. So we're going to accept that. We're happy with our season objectives. And we're going to go ahead to the next day so that we can set up our training. So like I said, our calendar, not going to change it too much. I'm just going to show a brief overview. So at the start of the season, we have kind of a lot of races that this is our first objective. It's a little bit hilly. We might be able to do okay there. But we have a lot of races that kind of don't really suit us. So these races we're going to be probably focusing on fulfilling the team orders and just kind of getting as much XP as possible to level up and then get upgrades for our rider. And then the same is kind of true for these early races here. And then this is really the first one, which is our second season objective, which is a great race for a climber. Of course, we're a very low-level climber, so we'll see where we are at that point in time, whether or not this is a race we could win or try and get a top 10, something like that. We'll have to kind of play it by ear. But like I said, a lot of these races are not really ones that are necessarily for us. The Mont Ventoux Challenge is an exception. That's another good one for our style of rider. And we should have some pretty interesting competition in that one. In real life, a couple of the World Tour teams participate in that race, so we'll see whether or not that holds true in the game as well. Then we have the National Championships. The ITT, probably not going to be for us at this point, and the road race, you never know. I don't think I've ever played as a rider from Luxembourg before, so I'm not actually sure how many riders will be at the national championships. I'm guessing it will be a pretty small field, which could make that race pretty interesting from a tactical perspective. Then we get into more races. That one, Cerami, is just not at all up our alley with the cobblestones. And then we have a couple more climbing races towards the end of the season, and it's around this time actually that we need to add the Tour de l'Avenir, and it only takes 1 point to do that, so I missed that. We're going to go ahead and do that. So that's our third objective. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid schedule for our first season. There's going to be a decent number of races where there's probably not going to be a ton of action, and I'll be going through quickly, but there's also a few races where we'll be able to test our skills and see what happens. So now I'm going to set up our training regimen for the season, and I will be back to talk you guys through it once it's done. Okay, so I finished setting the training. For those of you who know this game, you know that basically the tried and true method, I learned it from watching Benji Nasson videos. It's around in the community. You basically just use either hard or break, and those are the only two types of training that you need. Basically, you just do 2 weeks of hard training followed by a week of break, and it allows you to keep your fitness up around 90 for most of the season. So you can see from this little chart here that I've done that. We're going to be at a pretty solid fitness level for pretty much the majority of the season, and I think our most important object, target of the season, whatever you want to call it, objective, is the Tour de l'Avenir. That's a race that we can win, and we're going to be going to that race with pretty solid fitness, up around 98 to 100. So I think that will be good. That's all well and set up. So now we've got everything set up to start the career. So next episode we'll get into the races, and that will be kicking off with the gravel and tar race in New Zealand. Like I said, these races probably aren't going to be for us to win or place particularly well, but we're going to try and do the objectives that our team gives to us to earn as much XP as possible, basically. So thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch this video. If you liked it, it would be great if you could drop a subscription or thumbs up on the video. Like I said, I'm going to keep going with this series for now, and then in the long term I have sort of other plans to create additional cycling content that I think will be fun and interesting, hopefully. And also, like I said at the start of the video, if you're interested, you can follow me on Twitter for my thoughts and the occasional written piece on what's going on in the world of racing, which of course the World Tour season is about a month away from getting underway again, with racing in February. So that's just around the corner. I'm excited. I think it's going to be another great season, hopefully, as long as the majority of the races can go ahead with COVID protocols. I think we'll just kind of have to wait and see and play it by ear. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in. This is the first episode of the Andy Schleck Pro Cyclist career. And I will be back soon with another video, first installment with racing, and until then, I'll see you later.